We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of songwriting, chat with some of the most exciting artists in the world, and explore the stories behind their songs. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and thank you for joining us. Our guest today on the podcast is singer, actress, and songwriting royalty, McKee. The Seattle-born artist has carved out a cult following for her own music, including her long-lost sophomore album, Hot City, which was finally re-recorded and released in 2024 after she discovered a 500-page internet thread of fans begging for its return. But beyond her own catalogue, Bonnie is also one of the most prolific and celebrated pop songwriters of the last 2 decades. With over 200 billion streams across songs she's penned, Bonnie's credits include some of the biggest pop anthems of the modern era. Teenage Dream and Raw by Katy Perry, Dynamite by Teo Cruz, and hits for artists like Kesha, Kelly Clarkson, Britney Spears, and more. In today's episode, we're honoured to sit down with McKee to talk about her songwriting journey, from what first drew her to writing songs, to how she now mentors the next generation of writers. We discussed the story behind Hot City, how it was dropped by her label, found a second life online, and ultimately made its way back to fans. And of course, we're talking about some of her work with other artists, including the story behind co-writing one of the most beloved pop songs of the century, Katy Perry's Teenage Dream. We want to say a massive thank you to Bailey for her help with today's episode, and to remind everyone that McKee's album, Hot City, is out right now. You'll find links in the show notes on where you can stream her music and follow her across her socials. While you're in the show notes, make sure to follow us as well and subscribe to this very podcast. It really helps us out and it keeps you in the loop with all future episodes and guests. Now let's get into it. Here is our conversation with McKee. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, McKee. Bonnie, hello. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and having a chat with us today. I'm personally very, very excited about having you on. We are primarily a songwriting podcast, and I think that for yourself, one of the most impressive CVs in songwriting. So I'm very excited to kind of get into it today with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I would love to kind of maybe begin. I want to talk about the album Hot City. I want to talk about some of the songs you've previously worked on. But I was wondering maybe if we almost kind of go back to the start of where you got your introduction to songwriting and what originally attracted you to the art of, I guess, storytelling through song.
Yeah, when I was really little, I would write poetry. I always loved words. I wrote a lot of poetry and I was won a couple of county poetry contests in 3rd grade or whatever. And I would oftentimes write my own lyrics to the songs that I liked on the radio. So I would take whatever song was a hit at the time and make it about fairies or unicorns or whatever I was into, And then I always knew I wanted to sing. And so I was in choir and I took voice lessons and stuff. And I made a demo of cover songs when I was 13 years old. And there was one person in Seattle where I'm from that my mother knew that was in the industry. And that was Jonathan Poneman, who was at Sub Pop Records. He signed Nirvana and stuff. And so she gave him my demo and he was like, "That's great. You can sing, kid, but can you write?" And I took that as a challenge because I had kind of secretly been trying on my own, and I started experimenting with it. And I think the first artist that I heard that I understood was a songwriter and wrote their own music and wrote things for other people was Carole King. And Tapestry was a life-changing album for me. And so, yeah, I got curious about it. I made a demo of a bunch of, early songs and I gave it to everyone I knew. I thought that I was my own little record label where I had a CD burner, burn 4 CDs at a time. And I was look at me go. And I gave it to everyone I knew, and it ended up in the hands of someone that babysat for someone that knew someone in LA. It was like very, like really plucked from obscurity. And it ended up getting played on Mornings Eclectic on NPR. And then I was off to the races. There was a bidding war and I signed a record deal, and that's how I got into the biz.
I kind of love that though. I love that, and I mean, no discredit to Sub Pop. We've had some of their lovely artists on the podcast here, but I love that I want to say almost, I don't think necessarily snarky, but like the feedback of like, great singing, but can you write, has obviously, you've been like, well, I'll show them, and have then gone on to do so quite well.
I mean, like, thank God that he challenged me, you know?
Yeah, 100%. One thing that should be mentioned as well is that you're not only a songwriter. I do have to mention the fact that you also, as you mentioned, are a singer and an artist. I want to talk about the most recent album from yourself, Hot City. It came out last year, and for anyone who might not be across this, it was an album that was meant to come out, I want to say around 10 or 11 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, the label at the time didn't put it out. But then I want to say it was it like a Reddit page or a 500-page thread that you came across of fans that...
Yeah, it was a fan forum. I think it started out as like a Lana Del Rey thing or something. And they were talking about these songs because when I was signed to the record label, I took the songs on tour. So I played them for a lot of fans, and they had bootleg recordings of those live shows, and some of the demos leaked, and everyone was like, where are these songs? Like, we want these songs. What the hell, you know? And I had kind of abandoned it because the label owned the masters. And so I felt kind of helpless and like there's nothing I could do. And then when I saw that forum, and when I got on TikTok and started seeing fans comment about it, I was like, well, I mean, can I release these? Because I was always heartbroken that it never saw the light of day. And I'm like, well, if you want it, I want it too. So I did my research, and I played lawyer for like a solid, 8-10 months. And I figured out that, there was no re-recording clause. Like, I was allowed to re-record the masters. So I re-recorded the songs. I pulled a Taylor Swift, and I put it out myself last year.
I absolutely love that, though. Obviously, fans were connecting with the music, and that there was some strength in the songwriting in these songs. When you revisited the album, was there anything that surprised you in a way? Was anything that kind of maybe was interpreted differently at the time, and now that when you came back to it was kind of in a different, I guess, had a different perspective on it?
Definitely. And also the songs, the album was never finished. Like, I got dropped before I even finished the album. I also did the tour kind of prematurely. So, even in the middle of that tour, I changed some lyrics in the songs and stuff. Cause I was like, oh, I don't like now that I'm testing it on an audience, like I see what I can do better, I was like really at my songwriting prime, because it was like, I was just coming off the heels of having a bunch of hits with Katy Perry and Taio Cruz and Britney Spears and stuff. And so the songs really held up, like the bones of the songs were there. But I had a chance to really dig in and kind of chisel away and polish it and really make it what I always wanted it to really be.
100%. I imagine that, and not in a rude way, but there must be like a small sense of vindication for yourself, knowing that these songs obviously had some strength to them.
Definitely. And, I always felt that way, but I had so many people around me telling me, move on, just write new songs, like you're a songwriter. But I don't know. I think every songwriter knows, like, when you've written something special, it's hard to let it go. And I think a great song is timeless. And I always try to write timeless sort of evergreen songs that'll work in any decade or in any time. But the timing has to be right, and I feel like with the resurgence of like recession pop and everyone getting excited about like melodic pop again, it seemed like the perfect timing.
100%. It seems that there is an interest from music fans these days for like that melodic pop. And I think that what track was it? I really loved Show You Mine. I thought that was a great track on the record. Wondering whether you might be able to give us like a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. And also, I can respect that, as discussed, some of these songs were written a number of years ago. So if the memory bank isn't quite as strong as as normal, then that's fine. Wondering whether you might be able to share with us like how that song kind of came to be, or like the building and creation of that song.
Yeah, Show You Mine was, I was really like in my party girl phase right before, like when I was making this album. I was kind of at the end of my party girl phase, but I was going to a lot of parties. I was around a lot of cool people and hot people. And, I don't know, there was just like something exciting about, going to like a pool party in the summertime and being like, I want to, like, what's up? Like, what's underneath? I want to see what's underneath. And it's like, I'll show you yours, you show me mine, or I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Like a phrase that like we all are familiar with. And I hadn't heard anybody use that in like sort of with a sexual tinge yet. And I was like, how has somebody like tapped into that? So it just made sense.
It is a very, very catchy pop song. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. I would love to know, because I believe since the album there's been Forever 21, the single that came out this year. So I imagine, and I don't want to delve too deeply if we're not allowed to talk about it, but I imagine that maybe there's new music that fans maybe won't have to wait another 10 years for to be able to get their hands on.
Yeah, I'm currently just putting the finishing touches on Hot City Deluxe. So again, this album, Hot City, was really curated by the fans. I asked them, what do you want to hear? What are the songs that you are sad that didn't come out, And I did my best to curate that to their liking. And of course, there were a handful of songs that everyone was like, how come you didn't do this one? How come you didn't, So I'm just like filling in the gaps for the fans that wanted to hear these other 5 or 6 songs. And I have a full other album that I started a few years ago that I never saw the light of day because it had been a long hiatus for me. And I was like, okay, I have this new album. I was so excited for it. I took pictures for it. I was like really gearing up for it. And I was like, you know what? I feel like there's an unfinished chapter with Hot City. And if the fans are asking for that, I don't think they're going to stop asking for that. So I want to give the fans what they let them know that I'm listening to them. And then I can give them the new material. So that will be coming out next year.
That is very exciting to hear. I'm sure that there are lots and lots of people excited to kind of get onto new music from yourself and see what has been cooking. As mentioned, the songwriting credentials of yourself over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years has been, I think, an incredible output. In doing research for today, I think that, what was it? It was around, collectively, and I'm probably off by a few numbers, but 20 billion streams of songs that you've been involved with, which just is a phenomenal kind of, I was trying to think about it last night. It's a difficult number to comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it ever daunting for you? Like, does that feel like a weird thing for you to comprehend, the volume of times that your music has been, songs that you've been involved with, like have been streamed or played or like, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, there's a lot of, it's interesting because it used to be, units sold. It was like, you had a song on an album and then however many people bought that, that's how many people bought it. But when it streams, you get something every time somebody plays the song. So like when I would buy an album when I was a kid or whatever, I would listen to it over and over and over again. So, obviously like that doesn't mean it's 20 billion people. That means that it's, 20 billion streams. But I mean, it means a lot to me to have songs that people keep coming back to. And I don't know, it is kind of hard to fathom sometimes. I just went to the Katy Perry concert at the Forum last weekend, and hearing all of those people sing along to those songs is a really surreal experience for sure. It makes me really happy.
I do love that though. I would love to, if it's all right, talk a little bit about the CV that we've discussed. I've got a small list here, and I do have a question for it. We're not just going to list off your rap sheet because I feel it's too long and too comprehensive. We don't have enough time. But some of the biggest tracks under your name in terms of co-writing or songwriting, we've got Katy Perry, we've got Teenage Dream, Raw, California Girls, Part of Me, as mentioned, Teo Cruz, Dynamite, Britney Spears, Hold It Against Me, Kesha, Come On. And I think as well other songs by Cher, Christina Aguilera, Kelly Clarkson, Adam Lambert. I'm curious from your perspective, is there a song that you've worked on that you believe, because those are obviously some very, very big heavy hitters. Is there a song that you believe is like underrated, one that you kind of feel that out of all the co-writes you've done or songs that you've worked on that you think is had that special sauce that maybe didn't get as much love as it probably should have?
I feel like Christina Aguilera's Let There Be Love was one that I was like, this is just an obvious hit to me. And it never got the push that I felt like it deserved, although it has gone on to become like a fan favorite, and she plays it for her finale when she plays live shows. So somebody loves it, like because I feel like every songwriter has that experience where it's like you write something and you're like, oh wow, this is something, and then it's like it doesn't connect or whatever. But I feel like that one did kind of get the connection it deserved. I worked on BB Rex's last album, and we did a song called Miracle Man that I thought was just like really special. And I mean, that was mainly her. Like, she did a lot of that writing. But I just remember when she like sent me the little demo of it, I was like, this is something special. And I don't feel like anybody ever talks about it. Miracle Man is a really good one.
I have a feeling that these days, especially with artists like Bibi Rexha, is firstly a lovely human being, great music, but also there's this tendency that I feel that comes around every few years where pop music is maybe not still looked at as lesser than, the indie music or rock music, which is such a silly perspective to take in my mind. No disrespect to anyone that has a different opinion, but it is obviously just as, I think the art form of writing pop music is just as strong, if not stronger than rock music, because I think that popular music requires you to make something that is concise, catchy, and still has an emotional connection that resonates with people. And I find it really interesting when well-written pop songs don't connect.
Yeah. Yeah, pop music gets a bad rap where people assume that it's, fluffy and vapid and there's no message there to say. But it's really one of the most difficult genres to write in because you are limited in, what words sing well, first of all, lyrically, what phonetically is pleasing to the ear. There's only so many, it's kind of like the same 1,000 words or whatever that we're all kind of pulling from. And so I always like to try to find interesting, familiar words that are uncommon. But I feel like it's also a moving target. It's constantly evolving. So many things fall under the umbrella of pop music, and it borrows from all of the other genres as well. But I really like the challenge of writing pop music because it's like Tetris. It's like a $1 million word puzzle, like you just are rearranging things to be in like a perfect, tidy little package. And that's harder to do when you have parameters of like what's going to work and what's not in your genre. Because in other genres, if you can just kind of meander and go wherever you want, it's like, do your thing. But I like the tidiness and the challenge of writing in a box and still finding something original to say.
100%. I think that as you've kind of used the perfect words for it, but I think parameters is that perfect encapsulation of you've still got to do the same thing, but in a much more confined kind of way. So I think that, to the naysayers, I think there is some magic in popular music writing. I would love to be a tiny bit self-indulgent, if I may. One of the songs we did mention, obviously has stuck around and is still quite a big song, but even had a resurgence on, I think, TikTok and online in the last number of years, was Teenage Dream by Katy Perry. I'm curious if you remember the origins or even the kind of the how that song from your perspective of co-songwriter came to be and play out.
Teenage Dream was one of the most difficult songs I've ever written. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. Teenage Dream was one of the most difficult songs I've ever written. We rewrote it, 6 or 7 times front to back. We had the melody, we had the track, but the lyric was not quite there. And we settled on something that was kind of mediocre and kind of safe, that phonetically felt good and like kind of got the point across, but it was really missing like a colorful, splashy title. There were different versions that we wrote. One of them was like Try Me On, where it was sort of like a dress you up in my love thing where it was all like fashion stuff. And it was like a little bit kitsch, was very on brand for Katie. It was cute and it could have worked, but I feel like we all knew that there was more soul to that song, and that it deserved to have like more of an emotional depth to it. And so I'm proud of that one because that was my title, and that was my 8 Mile moment to like save the day. I was like, there's something here. I just got to dig a little deeper. And even though Max Martin had told us, like, we're done. The song is done. I don't want to hear anything else about it. You guys spent way too much time on it. We have a whole album to make. And I just kind of went home and dug around in my soul. And I thought about, what it was like. It felt like new, young love. And I thought about my first relationships and what it was like to be in love as a teenager. And how when you're that age, when you're an adolescent or whatever, everything is scary and you're nervous, and it's all blown out of proportion. But then when you meet someone and you really have a real connection, finally, it's like you can be comfortable. And, I remember with my first boyfriend, like, oh, he thinks I'm pretty without my makeup. I could really just like be vulnerable and let my walls come down. And then I started thinking about, the word teenager and how it's so evocative. Teenager brings up so many images, so many feelings. Everyone's teenage experience is intense, whether it's good or bad. And so, but it was too many syllables. Cut it down to teenage. And then I like the idea of it being kind of sexy. And so I was thinking about like, wet dreams or like, having like a poster on your wall and being like, ooh, like thinking about whoever your teenage dream is, That's kind of how I arrived there.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It is obviously a song that has, and I believe will continue to stand the test of time. So thank you very much for kind of indulging us there. One thing that I really loved about doing research for today and, finding out more things about both yourself and your discography and everything else was the fact that, and I don't think a number of musicians and songwriters who are as successful as yourself kind of do this in terms of that you've taken on mentoring young songwriters and young musicians as well, which I think is a brilliant thing. I think, who did we have? There was Sophie Powers, Frankie Grande, just to name a few. I believe that there's 3 or 4 or 5 more. How did you kind of come across this? Like, what was the initial catalyst to wanting to be able to pay this forward and have the knowledge that you have shared and imparted onto the younger generation?
It's funny. I have this, my friend Liam Bennion, who was the president of my fan club when he was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And he would come to my shows and he would like make me gifts and all of this stuff. And like, he really studied my work and Max Martin's work and all of the, pop girlies of the 2010s. And we just kind of became friends because he was just, we would talk online and stuff. And then during the pandemic, he was like, can I call you? And I was like, I mean, I guess so. And he was like, I think I want to be a songwriter. And I was like, uh-oh, because, like such a great relationship and friendship. And I was like, oh, if it's bad, like, what am I going to do? And then he sent me some stuff and it was really good. Like it had a lot of potential. And I was like, you know what? Like if you just tweak this a little bit, if you just like, here's like a couple of rules, a couple of things to go by, to sort of strengthen your writing, and he listened and he applied it and it was really good. And I was like, this is fun. Like I'm having fun. And he's actually had a few pretty big cuts. Like he ended up coming out to LA and I've been, kind of helping him out and stuff. But he really took it and ran. And I think, just being a veteran now in the industry, I'm obviously working with the younger artists, like the Sophie Powerses of the world. And I think that it's just fun for me to share the wisdom. I don't know. I'm not a gatekeeper and I love to watch artists thrive and grow. And, the kind of rules or whatever that I've learned about songwriting really apply to any genre. And I love to polish things and make them perfect. Like I'm really a perfectionist. And sometimes something is like almost there if you could just, and so I don't know. I kind of did it out of the love of great art. And like, there's been plenty of times where I've just been like, hey, you should fix this or that. And like, I don't need credit. Just do it because I want the song to be great and I want it to live in the world. And I don't know. I get a lot of joy out of that.
I absolutely love that though. Has there been anything that you've found that possibly, what's the best way to word it? Like they've taught you back? Has there been any insights that they've kind of given you that you've been like, oh, that's interesting. I've never looked at it for that perspective, or is it still very much you schooling them on,
I think that,
the art?
I think that it's important to keep in touch with like the younger generation and what they're doing and how things work. And it was funny seeing, 5 or 6 years ago, the trends of kind of writing with TikTok in mind and thinking about like dynamics, which was always a thing anyway. But it's like going from something really small to something really big, where it's like, oh, this is a good transition, stuff like that. And I think it's also, there are similarities that I had learned early on about writing for sync, where it's like if you have something that's non-lyrical, that is like a sing-alongable bit, kind of like in my song Bombastic, there's like and that song still 10 years later I get big syncs on that for film and TV. And I think that they are really tuned into that too, and like understanding just like hooky little things that work for a broad audience. I mean, the younger generation they're really, because they have grown up on social media, they are like marketing geniuses. And I feel like Sophie has taught me so so much, and also helped me in my own artist stuff of just like, staying relevant and knowing like how it all works, knowing all the tricks of the trade, So I've learned a lot from them.
I think that's incredible. Thank you very much for kind of sharing that with us, and excited to see how all those like mentees go in terms of taking on the education and insights from yourself and being able to kind of apply that to their own music. Bonnie, I would love to ask, I know we've spoken about new music in terms of maybe what's coming. Can we talk about anything else? Is there anything else kind of left on the plate for 2025 for Bonnie McKee and what fans can kind of expect?
Well, I had the honor and the privilege of having my music video that I co-directed for Forever 21 make it into Tribeca Film Festival. It was the first. Thank you. It was the first year that Tribeca included music videos on the docket. And so I got to go out to New York and meet a bunch of producers and directors. And that has been a really incredible experience for me. I love stepping into a different medium or a different outlet in directing. And I've been screenwriting, and I'm working on a TV show that hopefully will see the light of day. We'll see. But yeah, it's fun to get into long form storytelling. And that has also, I'm able to apply a lot of the things that I've learned about songwriting to screenwriting, as far as just like character arcs and dynamics and that kind of thing. So I'm excited to kind of be the new kid in town and in a different field. And so you guys can look for some stuff in that department.
That is very, very exciting. I imagine that that actually fascinates me. Because obviously you've built quite a body of work in the songwriting world, and then applying that, as you said, that there are certain things that do translate over to screenwriting. I think that's fascinating, because I imagine that there would be certain tricks that maybe other previous screenwriters haven't thought of applied to the art of that. So I'm very excited for that. And we'll make sure we kind of share those things across the podcast socials when they do come to light. Bonnie, we usually wrap things up asking our guests what they're currently listening to at the moment. Is there anything that you've got on high rotation or really loving?
Can I tell you a secret? I don't listen to music. Like, I make music all day. And I feel like my brain is just so hyper analytical that I have a hard time like listening to music without it feeling like homework,
Totally fair.
Yeah. So I really, there's nothing for me to talk about at the moment. I'm sorry to say.
No. That is totally, I can actually very, very much respect that. Sometimes after we've listened to a number of albums for podcast guests, it's difficult to find something to listen to recreationally. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is there any recommendation, maybe a book, maybe a TV show, movie, podcast that you're currently loving?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I guess I'm a little late to the game, but I just finished Poker Face, and I really enjoyed that show. And also, but I think Severance is like really, really did something for me. Like, I still think about it. So I don't know. I love film and TV. I feel like that's where I go to like get inspired and escape, like music doesn't feel like an escape for me the way that it used to, which I'm like kind of sad about that was like because it became my job, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, everybody's already seen Severance, but big fan over here. Big fan.
but still very good recommendation. So look, I very much appreciate that. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and having a chat with us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.